Hello, good evening, welcome. Sunday School for Sunday, May the 30th, and it's 1 Kings chapter 19. Someone asked me today about getting back episodes of this. The episodes right from 2 Samuel 23 are all available on my YouTube channel. Before that, they're available on my Facebook page, so enjoy. Let me ask you a key question. How's your prayer life doing? Do you hear from God as well as listing Him your problems, your wants, and your needs? Sometimes we feel very alone and we don't recognize God's response to our prayers. God is often quite subtle. If we don't recognize that response, it can make us feel a bit alone. Now, Elijah, despite his dramatic success in overcoming the prophets of Baal, he is now hunted by Jezebel and feeling very alone. So pause your video and turn to 1 Kings 19. Okay, if you're there, 1 Kings 19. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid, and he arose and ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servants there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." And he lay down and slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him and said, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones, and a jar of water. And he ate and drank, and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came again a second time, and touched him, and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." And he arose, and ate and drank, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights, to Horeb, the mount of God. There he came to a cave, and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I've been very jealous of the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even only I, am left, and seek my life to take it away." And he said, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by. And a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire the sound of a low whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak, and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he said, "I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I, am left only, and they seek my life to take it away." And the Lord said to him, "Go and return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu, the son of Nimshi, you shall anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah, you shall anoint to be prophet in your place. And then the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death, and the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So he departed from there, and found Elisha, son of Shaphat, who was ploughing with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him. He was with the 12th. Elijah passed by him and cast his cloak upon him. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, "Let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will follow you." And he said to him, "Go back again, for what have I done to you?" And he returned from following him, and took the yoke of oxen and sacrificed them, and boiled the flesh with the yokes of the oxen, and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and went after Elijah and assisted him. I don't know about you, but I get quite excited when I read these stories. Each chapter has something dramatic. There's not much missing. Let's look at this. When Ahab reports to Jezebel what had happened, and it's interesting that Ahab reports to Jezebel, it tells you something about who wears the pants in that house, so to speak. However, instead of considering that maybe the God of Yahweh was real and that Baal was false, Jezebel throws a tantrum and threatens to kill Elijah. Elijah may have thought that the miracle at Carmel would have brought about a conversion of Ahab, Jezebel, and the whole court, and bring the whole country back to Yahweh. However, he found that was a mistaken expectation, and Elijah is greatly discouraged. Elijah, perhaps wisely, does not stick around when Jezebel issues her threat to him. Jezebel had power and undoubtedly soldiers to carry out the task of searching for Elijah. So Elijah retreats to Beersheba at a distance of about 80 miles. And this might have been comparative safety, as it was after all in Judah, but still close enough to Israel for Jezebel's men to track him down. This mighty man of prayer, mighty enough to make the rain and the dew stop for 3.5 years, and then mighty enough to make it start again in prayer. Now he prayed that he might die. Elijah must have been very depressed that he would pray to die. Thankfully, this was a prayer that was not answered for Elijah. In fact, Elijah was one of the few men in the Bible to never die. Important of us to note the lesson here that God is not going to answer our prayers in a way that will contravene his will. When Elijah says it is enough, we sense that Elijah really meant, "I just can't do this anymore, Lord." The work was stressful, exhausting, and seemed to have accomplished nothing. The great work on Mount Carmel did not result in a lasting national revival or return to the Lord, as Elijah might have expected. God extends his mercy to Elijah. Physically speaking, Elijah needed rest and replenishment. God gave him rest under a broom tree and provided miraculous food for replenishment. Elijah then undertakes this enormous journey. Mount Horeb is in the south of Sinai, where Moses received the 10 Commandments. A journey of about 270 miles through mostly wilderness. Now, if Elijah went directly, this journey should have been easily completed in less than 2 weeks. Elijah's 40-day journey compares significantly with the 40 years that the children of Israel spent wandering in the wilderness. It's probably that Elijah didn't go directly and he didn't go at full speed. But I've still no doubt that God was trying to speak to Elijah throughout this time and wanting to encourage him and restore him to be a powerful prophet again. Interesting. Elijah's now in this cave in Horeb, also known as Mount Sinai. And God asks Elijah, "What are you doing here?" Now, God already knows the answer, but needs Elijah to come to his terms with himself and to submit to God's plan for the future. Elijah protested to God. I have faithfully served you, and now look at the danger I'm in. Wow. To Elijah and many servants of God since, it seems unfair that a faithful servant of God should be made to suffer. He was not accurate in claiming to be alone, but it reflected how Elijah felt. Even back at the confrontation on Mount Carmel, Elijah had said he was alone. When we are discouraged, it can make us feel more isolated and alone than we really are. Strangely, the reasons that Elijah provided for wanting to die were actually very important reasons for him to remain alive. If he really was the last prophet or believer alive, should he not seek to live as long as possible? God knew that Elijah in this state of depression needed encouragement. What he really needed was a personal encounter with God. God brings his presence before Elijah. But first, to show where he was not, Lord brings powerful signs. He brings this enormous wind, but the Lord was not in the wind. The Lord was not in the earthquake. The Lord was not in the fire. Like many of us, Elijah probably looks for God in dramatic manifestations. After the drama of God's power on Mount Carmel, that's not really surprising. Certainly, God sometimes appears in such ways, but he often appears in less dramatic surroundings. As God said to Zerubbabel, Zechariah 4:6, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. Immediately Elijah senses that God was present in the still small voice, in a way that he was not in the previous more dramatic phenomena. Because he sensed the special presence of God, Elijah immediately humbles himself. Now in this situation, Elijah is ready to hear from God and to follow God's instruction. So God gives Elijah a task to focus on. This was necessary to stop him looking at himself and his own circumstances and to get on with what God wants him to do. God sent him back down the road. And when Elijah went back over that road, it was a very different step from that which brought him down to Beersheba. He had come along terrified and distressed, but now goes back with a real sense of purpose. God had got more work for Elijah to do. He would also demonstrate God's choice of Jehu to be the king to succeed the corrupt Ahab and his wife Jezebel. God gave something else to the discouraged and the depressed prophet. Beyond just the work to do, he also gives him a friend and a successor. Elijah needed a friend. The core of his complaint before God was that he was alone. God let him know that there was a man ready to learn from the great prophet and to be his disciple and companion. This gave Elijah hope, since Elisha would be raised up as the successor to Elijah. He then knew that his work would continue even after his death. At this stage, of course, Elijah doesn't know that he's not going to die. God also promises Elijah that the idolatrous worshippers will die, leaving only 7,000 whose knees have not bowed to Baal. When you read this today, you cannot help but wonder when God is going to bring judgment on this world around us now. For we see the same worship of idols and false gods and rejection of the true gospel. So Elijah does what the still small voice of God told him to do, albeit in reverse order to what God described to him. Perhaps Elijah believed that he needed a friend first more than anything else. Elijah finds Elisha and commissioned him to the ministry. Now it's worth noting here that Elisha was a man of some substance. After all, he had 12 yoke of oxen. Elisha would be giving up a prosperous secular existence to become a prophet. Take encouragement from Elijah. Even though he felt alone and depressed, God was still there. It just took a while for Elijah to really listen to God, to restore the zeal that he had before. I expect you, like me, get discouraged when you feel alone or your message is rejected. That is when we should spend even more time in prayer, getting intimate with God. Then think of Elisha. How much of your earthly prosperity are you prepared to let go to follow what the Lord has got for you? Quite a lot in this chapter, isn't there? Elijah not hearing from the encouragement that he needs until God comes and is there in front of him. Elisha being called to give up his prosperous existence to be a prophet. How is God speaking to you this week? Just ask that you spend a lot of time in prayer this week about your witness to those around you, asking God to show you his way forward. Be blessed. I'll see you next week.